the jury about there being a dangerous condition. So that requires a certain level of evidence that there was in fact a dangerous condition. We can't just say they tripped on something and, they got hurt. We have to know what it was that they tripped on, and we have to know enough about that condition to know whether it was dangerous. So there are things that make this stronger or weaker. A strong condition will have a specific standard, right? That we can compare to the actual condition. So a stair riser or a tread height variation, right? Handrails that are missing or not compliant with whatever standard is in place for handrails. Ramp slopes that exceed the, code limits for how steep it can be. So there's certain coefficients of friction that are allowed on certain surfaces. So if it's a wet or waxed surface that exceeds that coefficient of friction that's allowed in the industry, or that's the industry standard for that, right? These are things that are strong conditions that would help us get past that hurdle, because it's an actual, we can prove, okay, there's, something that this should have been and it wasn't there, right? Or there's a question as to whether it was that.
Yeah, and I think that maybe in some practical fact situations, like one of them would be spilled water on the floor. That would be considered a dangerous condition, but we still need to identify what it was that you slipped and fell on the floor in order to meet our burden of proof, because that's the other thing that we need to do is we as plaintiffs need to bring evidence that is sufficient to meet the burden of proof, which is more likely than not.
Right.
So in the case of slipping and falling on some wet liquid on the floor, if you don't know what the wet liquid is, that makes it a little bit more difficult to prove that it was a dangerous condition, because
Right.
we don't even know what it was. So like little identifiers like, oh, it was sticky, it was brown, and then in that case you might think, and it was near a pop machine.
Right.
Now all three, you say, okay, sticky, brown, maybe some Coke, near a pop machine, more likely Coke that got spilled on the ground. Now you're starting to get somewhere with being able to meet your burden of proof that the dangerous condition was spilt pop on the floor.
Right. Or like, I think we had one case that I don't remember if we signed it, but I know we did an intake where there was some blue liquid on the floor and an employee was stocking blue Gatorade nearby. So like
Yeah,
it's more
you can
likely
make
than
that
not,
connection.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another one of the exceptions to notice that we didn't really mention at the beginning. But if the employee actually is the one who creates that dangerous condition, then you don't need the notice element satisfied or the foreseeability element satisfied. So that's one of the other ways that you can satisfy that portion of it. But so one is you need to establish that it was a dangerous condition. And in order to do that, you need to get as much evidence as you can to support what that dangerous condition was and where it was. Like, so that's important too. Like if you slip on ice, for example, and you can't identify where it was on the walkway where you slipped on. I mean, all those little details, they're important in meeting our burden of proof of proving that it was a dangerous condition that was the cause of the injury. Because if you can't identify where it was, then, well, maybe you didn't slip on the ice. Maybe you slipped on somebody who spilt pop, or maybe, maybe you tripped on, the edge of the sidewalk. So you need to be able to identify what the dangerous condition